A hero, a traitor, and a healer. Barriss Offee is one of those characters whose actual motivations are always a little difficult to pin down. As an individual well-versed in both the light and the dark sides of the Force, this fierce warrior is likely to inspire both admiration and hatred in equal measures. She is definitely one of the franchise's most complex characters, and for a storied saga like Star Wars, that's actually saying something. Thus, in this marvelous video, we will be diving into the origins of Barriss Offee and take a look at her anatomy to discover what makes her such a fearsome warrior. But before we move ahead, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. It might just be a small click for you, but to us, it means an awful lot. And with that out of the way, get your lightsabers ready because we are heading to a galaxy far, far away. Barriss Offee, Jedi Knight. Barriss was born on the cold, distant sands of Miriel, an outer rim planet somewhere in the farthest reaches of the galaxy. Miriel is home to the Mirielans, a race of aliens that is extremely similar to us, apart from their brilliantly colored skin, which is either blue or green. Born much before the border dispute, Anshin, the young Barriss, was found to be Force-sensitive at a very young age. Due to this, she spent most of her formative years at a Jedi temple. Now, growing up amongst a bunch of do-gooders like the Jedi has got to be pretty boring, right? But at least it allowed Barriss to grow pretty proficient in the use of the Force. Barriss was also known to be a part of an initiate clan during this period, and the young warrior grew pretty fond of wandering through the regal archways and courtyards of the Great Hall with the rest of her clan. As Barriss' skill as a Jedi grew, she ascended to the role of Padawan under another Jedi from her home planet, Master Luminara Unduli. Unduli, one of the wisest protectors of the Galactic Republic, became a very influential figure in Offee's life, and the Barriss still retains many of her mannerisms, especially in combat. Apart from Unduli, Barriss also grew close to another Jedi Knight, Tutso, who had been active during the Clone Wars. It was under Mara's tutelage that Barriss truly began mastering the lightsaber, and that's actually kind of necessary if you want to be a good Jedi. After years of training, Unduli finally sent the young Jedi out on a mission of her own, which involved the retrieval of an ancient book. The mission turned out to be one of the most challenging experiences of Barriss' life, as there were more than a few bloodthirsty creatures and brutal traps along her way. Even after Offee overcame these obstacles, it all amounted to nothing. The book literally turned into a pile of dust the moment she touched it. Like, if something so frustrating happened to one of us, we'd probably spend hours just screaming into the indifferent depths of space, right? But Offee, of course, is cut from a different cloth and goes straight to Unduli to confess her failure. In response, Unduli informed Barriss that she had never really expected her to succeed. Instead, the entire mission was more about the journey Offee went through to get her hands on it. Almost makes you wish that your boss was as kind as Unduli, but that's probably too much to ask for. Offee also made a few brief appearances in the prequel trilogy, most notably appearing in the meeting between the Jedi Council and Supreme Chancellor Palpatine. Here, she can be seen beside Unduli, expressing her concerns over the growing secessionist movement, as well as the imminent war with the Galactic Republic. She also sat in on the meeting inside Palpatine's office regarding the issue of whether the Chancellor should be assuming emergency powers. The fact that Offee was a part of the Jedi assault team that rescued Padme, Obi-Wan, and Anakin from Geonosis is a pretty solid testament to how much Offee's powers had grown since her early years. After the battle on Geonosis, we also had her first glimpse of the healer inside Offee, as she spent most of the night inside the temple clinic attending to the injured. Master Depa Billaba would later go on to state that Offee was key in saving many of the patients holed up inside the clinic, demonstrating the warrior's latent medical abilities. Now that is some pretty strong foreshadowing. Though Offee was already a decorated warrior, even before the Clone Wars spread like wildfire across the galaxy, the brutal conflict would still bear heavily on the Mirielans. Therefore, let's look at Offee's time in the Clone Wars in greater detail, as therein lies the key to the Jedi Warrior's eventual betrayal. Off the War and the Warrior. Barriss was still a pretty stable individual when the Clone Wars came knocking. Some 4 months into the war, Offee and Unduli made their way to the distant planet of Ilum, where the former was tasked with completing her final lightsaber, a rite of passage for most Jedi. However, the unsuspecting party soon found themselves embroiled in a separatist ambush, which almost destroyed the Jedi Temple in Ilum. Both Barriss and her master might have perished in the skirmish if not for a certain green Jedi who just can't seem to get his line straight. After this incident, the war grew even more violent and unpredictable, with Barriss and Unduli participating in numerous battles side by side. But this bond began fracturing after Offee's master was promoted to the rank of Jedi General. After witnessing endless bloodshed and the loss of countless lives, Barriss chose not to accompany her master to the battlefield and instead turned her attention to the temple clinic. Here, while healing the injured and the maimed, Barriss found some semblance of solace, but the sheer number of bodies entering the clinic every day eventually grew too much to bear. More than anything, this also led Offee to the bitter realization that despite all her trying, she could not heal the mental wounds that her patients had sustained. The internal turmoil growing within Barriss soon began manifesting physically, and she found herself unable to heal others. Despite being at such a severe disadvantage, Barriss chose to return to her master's order to assist Anakin's forces, which were stuck in Geonosis. In this battle, Barriss found an unexpected friend, Anakin's Padawan, Ahsoka Tano. Though the two didn't get along initially, there's nothing like a secret mission through the Geonosian catacombs to breed familiarity. The two Padawans snuck under the catacombs and successfully planted explosive grenades, which allowed Anakin's men the chance to escape. However, the duo was discovered by Poggle the Lesser in a Geonosian super tank. This was another close battle, but the Padawans were able to use Poggle's tank to destroy the reactor from the inside, despite being aware of the fact that the explosions would kill them all. Fortunately, the exterior armor of the tank was strong enough to withstand the explosion, and the two young warriors emerged from this event as close friends. Though the mission on Geonosian was a success, both Ahsoka and Offee were forced to take some time off from the war to recuperate. After this brief recovery period, the Padawans were tasked with making a routine supply run between Mace Windu, who was stationed on Dantooine, and a station near Ord Cestus. As we all probably know by now, routine missions never really go the way they're supposed to, and, well, something bad happened. The spacecraft was infiltrated by a swarm of Geonosian brainworms who had managed to sneak on board with the help of an infiltrated stormtrooper named Scythe. Needless to say, a creature named Brainworm is never good news, and soon, the entire convoy was compromised. The worms even managed to get to Offee and use their mind control-like powers to turn the Jedi into a murderous stalker hell-bent on killing Ahsoka. This led to some pretty tense scenes where the two friends were forced to fight against each other almost to the death. Tano manages to free her friend from the parasite's control by rupturing the coolant system, since the brainworms apparently hate the coal. As the war raged, Offee played crucial roles in numerous other missions. She was even incarcerated on the planet of Felucia before being rescued by Jedi General Aayla Secura and Clone Commander Bly. These instances of terrifying violence must have been quite traumatic by themselves, but the worst was yet to come. Offee was one of the few people present in the room when Grievous's message was received by the Jedi Temple of Coruscant. As diehard fans will probably remember, this message included the brutal torture of Jedi Knight Eth Koth, which Barriss witnessed with her own eyes before being dismissed by Yoda. During this period, Barriss also trained with Ahsoka, even though the two were quite different in the way they approached combat. It's evident during this arc that Offee's fighting style is much more conventional than Tano's, though both can be equally lethal. After a slew of successful missions, Barriss was finally acknowledged for her contributions to the war effort. Not only did she ascend to the position of a Jedi Knight, but was also awarded with the militaristic rank of General. But all good things come at a cost, and for Offee, the price to pay was her mind. After her rise through the Jedi ranks, Offee began spending most of her time lost in contemplation inside the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. But by the last year of the Clone Wars, the once promising Jedi had gone through pretty concerning changes. Her views regarding the nature of good and evil, as well as the role of Jedis, became increasingly convoluted, leading Offee to believe that both the Jedi and Republic had lost their way. These twisted ideas gained even more influence on Barriss once she came into contact with Letta Termon, a Coruscanti radical who stood in opposition to the Jedi's involvement in the Clone Wars. Offee, torn between her loyalty to the Jedi and her disturbing realizations, began leaning toward Termon's philosophies, and, well, things quickly took a pretty violent turn. Offee volunteered to help Termon in her cause and train her in the use of nanodroid bombs. These droids were then fed to Jacker Bomani, a shady munitions expert who also happened to be Termon's husband. The moment Bomani entered the Jedi Temple, it was already over for the Jedi, and in the ensuing explosions, Jedi Knights, clones, civilians, and military personnel lost their lives. Offee attended the funeral ceremony for her fallen comrades with an icy cold demeanor that would become synonymous with her in the following years. We also learned that among the victims of this attack was Tutso, the man who once taught young Offee how to wield her lightsaber. Life does come a full circle sometimes, doesn't it? Anyway, Offee decided to follow up her terrorist attack with a cold-blooded murder of Termon, who was locked in a prison cell. That too, by a forced choking. I guess Jedi turncoats really do have a thing for that particular trick. Unfortunately, the murder was blamed on Tano, and Offee enthusiastically participated in the consequent manhunt for her former friend. During this incident, Offee displayed a more cunning and malicious side of herself, manipulating Tano into believing that she was still on Ahsoka's side. The cunning Kofi leads the clueless Ahsoka to an abandoned explosive warehouse, which is literally filled with nano-droid explosives, identical to the ones that had been used for the attack on the Jedi Temple. Offee then attacked Ahsoka herself, although under the guise of former assassin Asajj Ventress. Eventually, Tano was arrested by Republic clones and convicted of the heinous bombing. As a result, Ahsoka was expelled from the Jedi Order, and that would have probably been the end of it if not for Ahsoka's infamous master, Anakin, never known to be the patient kind, decided to take matters into his own hands by interrogating Ventress, who would go on to reveal that her lightsabers had actually been stolen. Skywalker, perceptive as always, walked straight into Offee's temple chambers and ambushed the Mirialan with her own lightsaber. Desperate to defend herself, Offee pulled out Ventress's lightsaber and, well, revealed her dark secret. What followed was a long and excruciating battle between Anakin and Offee, but the Master Jedi was eventually able to capture the traitor. Just before being captured, Offee reveals that in her head, it was the Jedi who were to blame for the death and destruction around them. To Barriss, it's definitely the Jedi who were responsible for the endless war. Offee was imprisoned for her very long list of offenses, but these Force users are pretty tricky to pin down, to be honest. Still, Offee did end up spending the rest of the war at the Republic Center for Military Operations, waiting for her one chance to escape. Barriss Offee saga in Star Wars: Tales of the Empire. For a long time after the Clone Wars animated saga, Barriss remained one of the most intriguing yet underdeveloped characters in all of Star Wars. But then, a couple of weeks ago, we were treated to the animated mini-series Star Wars: Tales of the Empire, which allowed us to catch a glimpse of Offee's future after the events of the Clone War. Barriss's chance at freedom came suddenly in the midst of a literal nightmare filled with death and destruction. When Offee awoke, she found that the Jedi Temple outside her cell was under heavy attack. This turned out to be the day that Palpatine passed Order 66, the infamous decree that led to the total massacre of almost all Jedis in existence. Later, Offee's cell is visited by another Jedi traitor, Lyn Rakish, who reveals that she had joined up with the Galactic Empire Inquisitorius program. Rakish, also known as the Fourth Sister, would actually end up becoming a pretty pivotal character overall, at least with respect to Offee's journey. Upon the Grand Inquisitor's request, Offee was chosen as one of the few Force-sensitive individuals responsible for hunting down the Jedi that had managed to survive Order 66. But the induction process here was a bit too brutal, even for the most seasoned of warriors. In the final stages of her training, Offee was locked inside a pit with fellow trainee, Dante. The two would go on to indulge in a fight to the death. The Grand Inquisitor proudly looked on as the students fought for their lives, and after a long battle, Offee managed to remain standing. Upon making it through this bloody initiation, Barriss was introduced to the man who had once been responsible for her imprisonment, Anakin Skywalker. The fierce Jedi warrior, of course, had assumed a new identity by then, that of the malevolent Sith Lord Darth Vader. As a part of their duties, Offee and Rakish were sent to track down a fledgling Jedi on a distant planet in outer territories. Upon landing on the planet, the two proceeded to interrogate the poverty-stricken population regarding the Jedi's whereabouts. It was here that Offee first noticed her partner's brutal methods of interrogation, and this actually sowed the seeds of the conflict that was to follow. After Rakish's massacre of the townspeople, the two Inquisitors began differing in their methods, and Offee began seeing the error of her ways. On the way to the hidden Jedi, their differences would grow into a full-blown physical conflict, which saw Offee joining forces with the Jedi he had been tasked with hunting down. Undeterred, Rakish continued with her mission and managed to kill Jedi on her own. In retaliation, Offee would use the Force to push her fellow Inquisitor off the mountainside. But in the world of Star Wars, personal conflicts rarely end that easily, and Rakish would rear her head once more years after this initial skirmish. During this relatively peaceful period, Offee had already renounced the role of an Inquisitor, going back to her roots as a Jedi and a healer. She soon began to gain a reputation as a healer, known for assisting wayward travelers from a small encampment on an icy, desolate planet. She also gained the loyalty of a small ragtag crew that followed the healer's ideals with great reverence and admiration. But then one day, her old nemesis, Rakish, made it to the healer's humble abode, leading to a brief skirmish inside the labyrinthine catacombs of the icy desert. Even though Offee clearly had the upper hand during this fight, the fierce Mirialan seemed oddly hesitant to hurt her old friend. Growing more frustrated by the second, Lyn Rakish swung her sword wildly at the walls of the endless caverns, but unfortunately ended up impaling Offee. But despite her grievous injuries, the Mirialan still managed to convince Rakish of the dangers of the dark side, beckoning her long-lost friend back to the light. One of the final and most evocative images from the entire Tales of the Empire storyline depicts Rakish carrying Offee's unconscious body out of the cave, indicating that the healer had managed to heal her friend at the very end. Now, if that's not poetic, we don't know what is. Offee's story is often seen as a cautionary tale that had a deep impact on the entire Jedi Order, but perhaps the most betrayed were Ahsoka and Unduli, with the latter turning her attention to repairing the damage from separatist attacks to find some semblance of solace. I guess fear and anger can get the best of us, even the Jedi.
There's only one way to find out. Funny, those belong to Ventress.
Mirialan anatomy and secrets. Since Mirialans are so uncannily similar to humans, it would definitely be interesting to see if their biological characteristics grant them any advantages, especially in battle. Thus, in this next section, we will briefly explore some long-standing questions regarding Offee's physical gifts. Are Mirialans known for their physical abilities? Mirialans are actually quite unremarkable in their physical attributes, especially when compared to some of the more extravagant alien races we have seen in the long-running franchise. Barriss, one of the most formidable warriors the Mirialans have ever produced, stands at about 1.66 meters, pretty average, even for humans. But despite this, the Mirialans are well known for their enhanced reflexes, which makes them uniquely agile and dexterous. We can bet that this comes in pretty handy during all those flashy lightsaber duels. In addition to this, Mirialans appear to have a higher endurance than the typical human, as their natural habitats are deserts or wastelands. Probably a poor choice, at least in terms of real estate, but you can't deny that such a life would harden almost anyone up. The species can also reproduce with humans and are also capable of having human Mirialan offspring, though we have not seen many of these in the series yet. Most Mirialans can easily be distinguished from humans owing to their yellow-green or pink-colored skin, which is usually marked with ancestral tattoos. These tattoos are an age-old tradition, which is only followed by the more conservative Mirialan families that still feel attached to the custom. These are usually gained through achieving a special task and an expertise that is unique to each Mirialan. However, many from the lower classes have begun seeing these tattoos as nothing more than status symbols. I guess it's not just us old Earthlings that get weird about customs.
Perhaps you're not as powerful as we...
Is force sensitivity common among Mirialans? Though there's no concrete proof that force sensitivity is a common phenomenon on the cold sands of Miriel, most inhabitants still choose to respect and listen to the mystic power. The race is known for its spirituality and has managed to establish a strong connection with the natural world around them. This has allowed them to gain a primitive understanding of the force, which is quite unique when compared to the rest of the galaxy. Maybe it's because of this, but there was once a long-standing tradition among the Mirialans to take fellow Mirialans as their Padawans. Maybe they do have some secrets about the Force after all. Barriss Offee's abilities and powers. Like many other Jedi, Barriss was found to be Force-sensitive at a very young age. After years of rigorous training, she grew proficient in the use of telekinesis and even learned how to choke people with it, like a true badass. Her Force strangling also doesn't require her to look at the victim, which has to be pretty useful in situations that call for stealth. Over the years, she has also grown into a formidable lightsaber user, proficient in the use of the Form Free, or Soresu. In her appearances across various forms of media, we have seen Offee hold her own against hordes of clones, and even Anakin Skywalker himself. Her expertise in the use of lightsabers is so profound that she was able to easily overwhelm Tano while using Ventress's dual sabers. She also seems to be pretty talented at staying under the radar, as she was able to survive for years without being detected by the almost omnipresent Inquisitors.
The Jedi are gone.
Barriss's battle equipment. Barriss wore the usual Mirialan Jedi Padawan robes during her early years, which included a black robe and a blue cape. This changed when she was inducted into the Inquisitorius, after which she began dressing in an Inquisitor uniform along with a helmet. But Offee ditched the headgear upon denouncing the Empire and went on to adopt an unassuming fur coat as her outfit while serving as a healer. As a Jedi, she also carried a blue-bladed lightsaber, but eventually took to more advanced forms of weaponry. Not only did she show a strange knack for using Ventress's twin lightsabers, but she also adapted a double-bladed spinning lightsaber when working as an Inquisitor. It just kind of goes to show that the bad guys' weapons are always cooler, at least in the Star Wars universe. Marvelous verdict. We have finally reached the end of Barriss Offee's twisted tale, and frankly, it's one of the best redemption arcs in all of Star Wars. It adds a great deal of complexity to relatively unknown characters, and proves that internal turmoil isn't reserved for just the Skywalkers and Solos. In our opinion, it's in these smaller tales that the world of Star Wars truly comes alive, as there's definitely a lot more going on at any given point than the audience is aware. Barriss's story will undoubtedly serve as a cautionary tale for generations of Jedis and Force wielders to follow. That's it for this one, but do let us know what Star Wars character you'd like to see us cover next. Also, don't forget to hit the subscribe button to stay up to date with all of our marvelous content. That's it for now, and we will catch you at the next one. Until then, may the Force be with you.